Sweet, sweet Spirit, infinite presence, source of all that is, abounding with inspiration, with joy, with possibility, with love. In my mind's eye, I look around. I take in the wonder of this earth, of nature, of my home. Each of us spins in infinity. Each of us channeling source, channeling infinite possibility. I know I am one with divine mind, one with all that is. I see and feel spiritual power. In this oneness, I see ripening, unfolding, newness. Each breath welcomes new beginnings. I see the universe opening up for each of us as we step through into greater illumination. We are each co-creating our experiences. In deep reverence, I know and affirm, I allow, I accept, I receive. I feel divine energy flowing effortlessly as inspiration, as joy, as possibility, and love. I feel divine energy flowing effortlessly. It's flowing as inspiration, joy, possibility, and love. Yes, I accept all this as natural. All good shows up for each of us as each of us. Divine potential is infinite, bigger than any concern. I am resilient. I am capable. I am standing on holy ground. Yes. Right now, each of us is manifesting divine mind's finest creation, our divine nature. I know that as an expression of life, each of us is energized by the same power that stimulates the ebb and flow of the waves on the shore. We are each a powerful being, deserving of all of the bounty of the universe. I allow, I accept, I receive. And so I know the words spoken today inspire. The music is joy. Our community is rich with possibility and love. I am in deep gratitude for our coming together. Each of us manifesting spiritual power come to life, opening up as channels of divine good. I release this into the spiritual law which expresses naturally and eternally. The life principle manifests as me, as us, in every moment. And in deep gratitude I know, and so it is.
So our theme this year that we're looking at, our intention that we're setting to explore, is the idea of growing deeper, rising higher. Growing deeper, rising higher. And today we're going to start that off by looking at probably the deepest idea that we have in our teaching, which is that God's nature and our nature are one. God's nature is our nature. And it helps to understand, first of all, what is God's nature, because if I go around believing that God's nature is an angry, judgmental person or being, super guy, I don't want to be part of that nature, right? So we're going to explore moving away from that. So I began the service by wishing you Happy New Year, right? But is it the New Year 2025? See, if you're Chinese or following the Chinese calendar, the New Year won't happen until January 29th, and that'll be the year 4723. The year of the snake, yes. The Jewish New Year was October the 2nd, and it's 5785 in the Jewish calendar. So in our calendar, we say that those dates for those cultures they float around. They're never quite the same, right? But that's because we live on a solar-based Gregorian calendar, which, did you know the Gregorian calendar didn't come in until about 1586, I think it was? It's only about 450 years old that we started doing it. It was an adjustment to the Julian calendar, which was from the Roman Empire. So if you follow a lunar calendar, their holidays are on the same date, and it's ours in the Gregorian calendar that float around to odd little dates, right? Because they're always based on this certain day after this the full moon of this certain month. So what the heck does this have to do with God's nature? It's a reminder that we view God from our culturally influenced perspective, which is always limited, just as we say that the sun rises and sets, or during the seasons it moves to the north or the south, but the sun doesn't move, relatively speaking, right? We're moving. So our ideas of God are not fully what God is. I had a wonderful experience of this the other day, and I'm going to talk about two people who are actually in the room at the moment, who hopefully won't mind. But was it yesterday, I think, that Linda called me up, maybe it was the day before, called me up and said, it was the day before, and said, Steve and Annie's garage door is open and there's no vehicles there. And she was concerned, and she's a good concerned neighbor. She, keeps tabs on that. Well, I had a different perspective because, first of all, I know that my garage door had stuck open for 3 days a couple of years ago, and nothing vanished out of my garage, so I wasn't worried about it. And I know that they leave their garage door open, and that's Steve over there, by the way. And the other thing that I knew was that Steve had taken his truck in to be worked on the night before, and so that's why it wasn't in the driveway. And I could hear him working around on the side of the house, and I knew he was there. So a different perspective, right? It's a different perspective. And so the invitation is that we expand and shift our perspective from what I'm absolutely certain I know that this is the situation, this is reality, to maybe it's not so much. So maybe this infinite thing that we give the label of God, because frankly we don't have really a better word. We don't have any words because there are no words that really can encompass the infiniteness, right? So our ideas of God are not fully what God is. They're only our best guesses from a limited perspective. And they're heavily influenced by the existing culture, based on someone's long ago ideas, and often accompanied by extreme penalties for disagreeing. Right? If you disagree with certain people's ideas of what God is, you can get death, you can get punishment in the afterlife, you can get all sorts of things. And in some cultures, to say, I am God is considered blasphemy with all sorts of punishments. And in other cultures, when you say, I am God, they look at you and say, oh, congratulations, I'm glad you finally figured that out. Right? My personal favorite perspective is the Taoist perspective, which begins the Tao Te Ching, which is the kind of foundational book, if you will, of the whole Taoist teaching from ancient China, 500 BC. It says the Tao that we can comprehend is not the eternal and infinite Tao. Got that? The Tao that we can comprehend, anything that we can comprehend about it, it's more. The names that we give it are not the eternal and infinite names. Any name I give it, anything I use to describe it is not it. It's more. So this helps us understand that whatever perspective we have on the divine, we need to hold loosely. We need to hold gently because it's more than that. It's sort of like if I'm going to go back to Linda again. If I look at Linda and say, this is Linda, she's a female, and I do describe a whole bunch of things, it's not the wholeness of who Linda is, right? She's more than that. And that's the truth of each one of us. So whatever names we use to describe this God, whatever attributes we assign to it, it's way more than that. And yet all spiritual traditions do their best to understand and share that perspective, to be what the Zen calls to be the finger pointing at the moon, to help us to look at and notice something else. See, the spiritual traditions and practices are not the moon itself. nor the direct experience of the moon or the direct experience of the divine, if you will, which is what we all deeply seek. But there are ways to lift our eyes, to lift our vision and say, look up. There's more than just the dust and grit of your everyday life. There's something more, to become aware of that something more, something greater, and yet which we know we have some sort of a relationship with, an intimate relationship with. Yes? So our theme, our intention for this year is growing deeper, rising higher, and yet in truth, we already are infinitely deep. We are already infinitely deep, and we are already, and don't take this the wrong way, infinitely high. Okay? We are already that. We are that infinite individualizing as us. All we are doing is, in the process, is becoming more aware of who we truly, really are because we've forgotten. We got filmed over and covered over. Take a breath. As you take that breath, imagine if you can that whatever film is on you is starting to dissolve and pop off a little bit, and you're being able to see and be seen more clearly as the light of love and infinite power and presence that you are. So as humanity has grown in its understanding of life and of the world and of itself, our old ideas of God are expanding. See, we no longer believe in sprites and spirits and angels and demons and unhappy gods living high on the mountains that cause earthquakes and volcanoes. I have sometimes in the past said that, if we were transported through a time machine back to a time 2,000 or 3,000 years ago to certain cultures, and there was an earthquake, and they said, oh, the gods are angry, we have to sacrifice somebody. And we said, well, no, wait, that's not really what's happening. What's happening is there's these tectonic plates, you see, and they're kind of sliding underneath each other. You would become the sacrifice to the gods because they couldn't comprehend that. Because in their reality, there's this, God on the mountain or God under the earth or whatever that's unhappy, and we need to appease it through sacrifices, rituals, and good behavior. Good behavior, by the way, is always that which is culturally approved in that particular culture at that particular time, yes? Okay? So we no longer believe in final resting places under the earth or fiery places below that for punishment or above the finite dome of the sky where there's stars poked into it and there's a chariot carrying the sun across the sky and the moon across the sky. We don't believe in that stuff anymore, yes? I hope. Yeah, other than Buffy. So as these old ideas of God come crashing down, many people are left, and many times we have been left with believing there is nothing else. But just as our ideas of Santa Claus fall away to reveal the nature of giving and love that is behind the idea of what Santa Claus is, the old ideas of God fall away, and yet in that falling reveal a nature that's greater than our limited previous immature ideas of what God is. They fall away so that we can see more. They fall away so that we can see bigger and greater. As we mature as a species, we rise, we see further. And this is what people like Ernest Holmes and others in the New Thought movement have done. Rather than accepting the cultural beliefs of their time, they have, with a more scientific mindset, looked around and said, what is the real nature that's happening here? What is this really about? And so they described what they could see to the best of their ability, which is the truth of any mystic in any time, yes? See, Jesus didn't use metaphors that involve driving your car down the road or computers or any of the metaphors that we could use today because there weren't any. And nobody in his culture would have understood it. Okay, so he spoke to the people in his time in his way. Lao Tzu and Zhuangzi, the early Taoist masters, spoke to the people in their time in their way. These days we don't run around with new wine and old wineskins and metaphors like that, but we understand other things. So all the mystics have spoken from their perspective of their time to the people of their time in the language of their time. It's the best we can do, and so that's what the New Thought mystics, if you will, Ernest Holmes and others have done to the best of their ability. And so during the rest of this month, we're going to be exploring Ernest's vision of what he believes this reality is, what this thing, as he likes to call it at the start, the thing itself is. But today I want to start off by inviting us into an experience of our divine nature. It's not so we don't just know about it, but we have a more direct experience of our own divine nature, which, by the way, is the same as the nature of the divine, individualized as us. If you want to see God, look at your neighbor or look in a mirror, and you'll see God. You're looking at God. By the way, you can look at the chair, you can look at the building, you can look at the trees outside, you can look at the cars in the parking lot. All of it is this infinite beingness, whatever name we want to give it. Ernest Holmes once talked about that. There was a woman at one of his lectures that said that, well, my husband would come and listen to your lectures because he agrees with a lot of what you say, but he doesn't like the fact that you use the word God. He's an engineer and he just doesn't like that word and believe in it. And so Ernest said to her, well, in that case, let me know when he comes and I'll just call it the potato. Because he's not attached to the word. He says, but eventually you might as well just call it God, because we know what we're talking about, and God is that word that kind of points us in that direction. So we can understand that. And it's one of the things that, when people come into this kind of a teaching, sometimes they don't like the word God, and so we have to explain, by God I don't mean the old guy in the sky with the long white beard, going, I like you and I don't like you and all that other stuff. That's not it. We're talking about an infinite beingness, an infinite presence that is absolute pure love, joy, and wholeness. And so we're going to play with the experience of that and deepen into that experience. And we're going to work with it through a New Thought teacher named Thomas Troward, who was a British, originally a judge in India in the late 1800s, and then retired back to England, where he came from, strongly influenced by the culture that he had lived in, the Hindu Vedantic culture that he had lived in. And he was then, again, a strong influence on Ernest Holmes in his thought. So Thomas Troward cites 7 main aspects of God, as he calls them. And these are life. You've heard me talk about these before if you've been here for a while. Life, love, light, power, peace, beauty, and joy. And he talks about them as a sequential flow, as an expression of the infinite. So I'm going to invite us to take a few minutes to experience these aspects of God's nature. I'm going to ask Brent to come up and do a little bit of tickling of the ivories over here as we do this, to provide a little sweet background music for that. We experience these aspects of God's nature as aspects of our nature, right? So I'm going to invite you to take a breath. And if you feel comfortable, gently close your eyes. And take another deep breath and let yourself just be. Nothing you have to do. Just take a moment to be a being sitting in a chair breathing. Allow yourself to become aware now of the first quality of the divine, which is life itself. That infinite presence is life. It is vitality. The root word is vita, which is life, aliveness. This is our health. This is our fully alive cells of our body. This is our fully alive minds. This is life itself moving in, through, and as us. Feel that. Breathe that in. Be aware of this life energy that inhabits every single cell of your body, every atom, every subatomic particle, all the space in between. If there's places where you feel that constricted a little bit, let that constriction go and allow that life to flow more powerfully, more fully. To where you feel your aliveness. Perhaps the aliveness you felt when you were a small child. We call it zest for life. There really is life itself. then out of that life is the tendency to move to more fully develop itself, to more fully express itself. And we call that love. Other words for it are allurement, attraction. There's a cosmologist who says that this allurement or attraction is inherent in the universe, that it's the nature as soon as the Big Bang occurred, as soon as the burst of life occurred, to start to attract itself into communities of atoms. And these communities of atoms then were attracted into communities of molecules, and communities of cells, and communities of multicellular beings, on and on and on and on. It's been said that God is love because this love, this attraction, this connection is our inherent nature, is the very nature of the universe. Feel that love within you. You are an expression of the love of the universe. It's why you exist. It's how you exist. Open your heart and feel that. Let that love pulse through every cell of your body. And then this infinite nature, guided by love, becomes light, which is the all-inclusive perception of infinite possibilities. It is that which brings awareness, light, to all of the infinite potentialities that could be. We might call it infinite intelligence. Be aware that that lives within you, unconstricted by whatever you may have been conditioned by, that beyond that conditioning, deeper than that conditioning, there is that within you which sees bigger, knows bigger, perceives bigger. Allow that perception to stretch out beyond where you've been before, beyond what you think you know to be true. And realize there are infinite possibilities. And from this nature, then, proceeds what we call power, the ability to create. Because there's no opposing force in a oneness, therefore life, urged by love, urged forward by love, and by the perception of pure potential, becomes the ability to create, because it could not stop short of action. And so there's this divine nature within us. Life, moved by love, experiencing infinite possibility, takes action, becomes form, becomes something. And that is the truth of us. It is why we are creative. Creativity is not just limited to a certain class of people we call artists. We are always creating. As the song said, we hold the pen that writes the next chapter of life. And through this process, then, we encounter peace. Because being a wholeness, being a oneness, there is nothing opposed. There is no conflict within this infinite oneness to be this expression. And so we find that place within us that knows that in truth there is nothing and no one against us in the universe. There may be the appearance of it on the human level, but that is not the infinite truth, the highest truth. And so we raise up to that highest truth, that true nature of the divine expressing, moving in, through, and as us has no opposition. Nor do we need to be in opposition to anything else. We are simply saying yes to the nature of the divine, the life, the love, the light, the power to move through us. And then this infinite presence must be beauty, because it creates out of its wholeness, so it is aligned with its own nature. It can't be opposed to something that it creates. And this concept of beauty, of perfect harmony and balance, is inherent in all that the universe creates. We on the human level have judgments of what is and isn't beauty, but those are just culturally taught to us. In the infinite presence, there is nothing but pure beauty. And finally, as it experiences its creation and experiences the creative process itself, it is joy. It is what in Eastern religions often is called bliss, because it finds pleasure both in the process of creation and in contemplation of the next steps in this creative process as it perceives even greater possibilities. And so we know that whatever we create, there's always something more that we can create, something more wonderful. It doesn't denigrate what we've created. It's just that once we get to that step, we can see another step. Once we get to the top of this mountain, we can see another mountain. And so this is our nature, because it is the divine nature, that nature of life, expressing as love, perceiving as light, creating as power. Experience that process as peace, seeing the beauty that is created and experiencing joy both in the creation and the process itself, and then in the potential for even more. Breathe that in. Say to yourself, I am that. And when you're ready, take a deep breath. Be aware of yourself sitting in the chair, and be fully present in the room as the divine. During the retreat yesterday, I played a song that was called God Blobs. We are all God blobs. Blobs of God. You and I are that. Nudge the God blob next to you and say, hi, God blob. Hi, God blob. So this week, one spiritual practice. Take time each day to contemplate one of those aspects: life, love, light, power, peace, beauty, and joy. Take one of those and let yourself align with it more. Maybe take the one that kind of challenges you. Say, I'm kind of feeling most out of alignment with that. And allow yourself just to simply contemplate that you are that. You don't have to make anything up about it or do anything with it. Just sit in contemplation. I am the infinite love of God. I am the infinite peace of God. Will you do that? Great. I'm going to close with a quote from the Science of Mind textbook. Ernest says, the divine plan, and he doesn't believe that the divine is some big guy, again, sitting up there with, I got a plan for each of every one of you. That's not what he's talking about. It's the divine expression, the divine tendency, the divine direction, if you will. The divine plan is one of freedom. Bondage or limitation is not God ordained. In other words, there's no big guy in the sky sitting there going, you can't do this. You can do anything you want. We are freedom. There's a responsibility with that. We'll talk about that later on. But we are freedom. So the divine plan is one of freedom. Bondage is not God ordained. Freedom is the birthright of every living soul. That's you. And so we have an affirmation. I invite you to say this with me. I am a radiant expression of the divine nature. One more time. I, with feeling, am a radiant expression of the divine nature. And so I am. And so it is. Thank you.